Hey guys, Sam here at NA Studios. In this video we're taking a look at rack toms and how changing the microphone position changes the sound. As always, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe. Let's jump straight in. Alright, so we've got three microphones on this rack tom. We've got one pointing at the centre, which is clipped onto the rim. We've got one pointing in between the centre and the edge, also clipped onto the rim. And then we've got one pointing down at the edge of the drum, also clipped onto the rim. The one at the edge is kind of what you'd see in a live sound scenario. You often tend to see like live sound guys pointing the mic right down at the rim. I've always kind of grimaced at this. I've never really liked it, but listening to the sound of it, it's kind of surprising. I think I'm converted. I always point it towards the very centre of the drum, but having listened to these comparisons, it's kind of opened my eyes a little bit. Let's take a listen to all three of them. Let's listen to them in the mix and then in solo. The first one down will be pointing right at the centre. The next one down will be in between the centre and the edge. And then the third one, the one right at the bottom of the session, is pointing right out the edge of the rim. Let's take a listen in the mix and then soloed. Okay, so a fair amount of difference there. Remember, these are unprocessed. We'll listen to them processed in just a moment. As we move down from the top one, which is pointing right at the centre, to the midway to the edge, we get more bottom end as we go down. Let's take a listen to those just separately. I've separated them out so we can hear them a bit easier. So we get more low end as we go down. Let's take a listen to them a bit slower so we can hear the spill in there as well. Now, I was expecting when you have a microphone pointed directly at the rim, I was expecting to get absolutely loads of overtones. That's kind of what we found as we did the snare and kick drum comparison videos, which you can find in the description and at the top now. I thought that was going to be the case here, but for whatever reason, it seems that as we point the microphone more towards the centre, we get more overtones from the drum. Remember, the first one is pointing at the centre, then midway, and the last one is the edge. Just listen one more time and listen to the overtones of the drum, the kind of honk there. We get more bottom end as we go down, but I feel like the overtones, the harmonics, are kind of reducing there, which is interesting. So as we move towards the edge of the drum, we get more low end. Let's take a listen to these processed, because I like to add a fair amount of slap to my toms when I process them. Let's take a look at how I'm processing them first. We're going on to Slate Digital's virtual mix rack, and I'm going on the rack tom preset. I do like this, and I've just brought down the threshold slightly, so we are compressing. We're adding a fair amount of top with the Revival. We're adding some high mids, kind of around 6.5K. We're adding quite a lot of that. We're adding 3.5 dB, taking out some low mids at 560, adding some bottom end, and then we're adding some of this shimmer sound on the Revival plugin, which is great. We're not compressing too heavily, but that is the exact same processing on all three of them. Let's take a listen to how it sounds when it's processed now. Again, this has kind of done the opposite of what I thought was going to happen. When you have the microphone pointing directly at the centre, my initial anticipation was that it was going to get more stick attack. So we were going to get more of that slap. But it seems like as we move along, as we get more towards the edge of the drum, we actually get more attack, we get more high end. With the microphone pointing directly at the center, we get some click, but as we move towards the edge, we get more of what I would kind of call slap. So instead of it being in that high mid register, we kind of get a bit more of the high end. Let's take another listen. So we get progressively more high end as we move down, as well as low end, but we get progressively higher high end, as it were. The frequency of that stick attack kind of moves up as we move more towards the edge of the drum, which was interesting for me. So what about the spill? Spill is definitely going to be a big factor in your tom mic positioning. You always tend to get a bit of ring off the drum if it's not completely dampened down. I don't like to dampen my drums too much. I like to let them sort of breathe. But what you'll find is that when you have your microphone pointing to the center of the drum, you tend to get a bit more of that ring. And as you move more towards the edge, it's pointing less towards the area of the drum that is vibrating the most. So the center of the drum is going to be vibrating the most, and then the edge is going to be vibrating far less. Let's take a listen with that in mind. Let's take a listen to it processed again, and then we'll listen to the full mix without it processed, and we'll see how it compares once we have that spill. It's particularly noticeable on number 1 versus number 3. If we take a listen to number 1 just after the hit, you've got a lot of that spill coming through just in the section after the hit. But if we take a listen to that in the third example, the one that is pointing directly towards the rim of the drum, so I've separated those out so we can hear them. The first one is directly at the center of the drum, and the second one is towards the edge of the drum. This is just the snare spill that you're listening to. This is not actually the hit of the rack tom. So take a listen to how a spill changes as we go from the microphone that's directly to the center of the drum and then the one to the edge. The pitch kind of comes up, doesn't it? So I think that's a reflection of pointing at the center of the drum where we're getting more of the low overtones. And then as we move to the edge of the drum, we're getting more of the higher overtones. So in the mix, which is going to be the more beneficial one? I kind of like the best of both worlds. I think that pointing at the very center of the drum is losing too much of that bottom end, and I don't like the kind of click that we get off it. I like the slap of the ones that are pointing more towards the edge. But I think the one that is pointing directly towards the edge has got a bit too much of a woofy bottom end. But I do feel that if you're pointing it towards the edge of the drum, you're going to get a far more processed sound right off the bat. And it's going to take that processing a bit better, and it's going to be a bit more extreme. So if you're adding the same amount of lows and highs to one pointing at the center as you are the edge, the one that's pointing towards the edge is going to sound like it has more added because it kind of has more there in the first place. Let's take a listen with that in mind to the processed sound and then the unprocessed sound and compare it now that we have that knowledge. So moving towards the edge of the drum, we get more kind of a pre-EQ'd sound, if you want to call it that. It takes that processing and it makes it a little bit more extreme. If you want a bit more of a natural sound, then pointing it towards the center of the drum, you're going to get that stick attack, but you're going to get a little less of the high end and a little less of the low end. I think having done this experiment, I'm going to go for somewhere in the middle so that I'm not getting anything too extreme either way. Hopefully that's been useful for you. Which one do you like the most? Pop it in the comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Do you like that pre-EQ'd kind of sound pointing right towards the edge, or do you like the more natural sound? I think it's going to change depending on which kind of genre you are recording, and definitely the drum and the drummer are going to make a big difference as well. Thanks a lot for watching. Make sure you subscribe and hit like. Take care. I'll see you soon. Cheers.